commence at 6:10 p.m. The first order of business is roll call. May we please commence roll call?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I will be doing attendance in a second. Okay. Oh, happy last meeting. Aw, anyways. Student trustee Mall. President Nika Manuri.
Present.
Vice President Kisowski.
Present.
Chief Staff Honors.
Present.
Speaker of the House Show.
Present.
Treasurer Hawk.
Present.
Reverend Simon Mock. Chairperson Guerrero.
Present.
Chairperson Patineo. Chairperson Almendras.
Present.
Chairperson Fernandez.
Present.
Chairperson Celestino.
Present.
Representative Beltran. Representative Caesar.
Present.
Representative Cruz. Representative Perdrew.
Present.
Representative Leiva. Representative Basantu.
Present.
Representative Sharma.
Present.
Representative Ansari.
Present.
Representative Giron. Representative Anthony.
Present.
Representative Bogdan. Representative Rohacker. Representative Alvarez. Representative Yulovska.
Present.
Representative Bassett.
Present.
Dari. Present. Representative Lamisa Khan.
Present.
Representative Rose. Representative Murtasa.
Present.
Representative Rashid.
Present.
Representative Thumu. Representative B.
Present.
Representative Slaughter. Representative Melody Slaughter. Representative Nansaka. Representative Nguyen. Representative Saadi. Representative Basta.
Present.
Representative Dean. Representative Mehta. Representative Pocaro.
Present.
Representative Adi.
Present.
Representative Glenn.
Present.
Representative Carbanda. Representative Sanya Carbanda.
Present.
Representative Sarah Khan. Representative Omani.
Present.
Representative Dolma.
Present.
What was that?
Oh, roll call sign.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Our next order of business is reading and approval of the minutes. Please take this time to read over the minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? If not, then the minutes will stand as approved. Our next order of business is reading and approval of the agenda. Please take this time to read over the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Yes, Sarah?
I motion to amend resolution 2022 as 12103 in old business.
There's been a motion to add resolution 2022 as 12103 to old business. Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All that opposed, please say nay. Does anyone abstain? If not, then the motion is passed. Are there any other changes to the agenda? If not, then the agenda will stand as approved. Our next order of business is public comments. Is there any public comments? If not, we will move on to the next order of business, which is guest speakers. And first, we have Lilu Rose and Daniela Guerrero, who will be speaking on LGBTQIA+ equity, pronouns, and GSC. Are they in person tonight? Okay, Lilu, you can come on up, and I'll share my screen. Hello? Okay, Daniela, you're gonna have to guide me a little bit.
No, that's okay. Hello everyone. We can start right now. Yeah, so we basically are presenting on LGBTQ issues, and we're really presenting on this because we think everyone that's a representative should be knowledgeable on this, and also because we work with the Gender and Sexuality Center to really understand what are the needs of individuals in the community. So we put a little presentation together for our last meeting to make sure everyone's aware of this. But yeah, that is a small introduction. I'm gonna let Lilu get started.
Yes, so our presentation is LGBTQIA plus equity, pronouns, and GSC. So here I break down what exactly all of this acronym means, so it's easier for people to understand. So it stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, pansexual, transgender, transsexual, queer, questioning, intersex, intergender, asexual, and aromantic. And this is something that is constantly evolving with new identities and new sexualities and ways to experience love. So yeah, just keep an open mind about it. And I got this little gingerbread person diagram to kind of help understand different ways that people identify within this community. So yeah.
And I can talk about gender identity, and gender expression. So gender identity first. It's important to know that gender is a social construct. How we see gender today is not how we saw gender 100 years ago, 50 years ago. It's probably not gonna be how we see gender in the future. Gender is created socially. We are socialized from a young age according to our assigned sex. Gender identity is an umbrella that includes being a woman, men, non-binary, and agender, and just any type of gender you identify at. Gender identity is the psychological sense of oneself, how you see yourself, that's your identity. A person's gender may or may not coincide with their biological assigned sex. Some people identify as neither male or female, or both as male and female. So it's really on a spectrum, and you're able to choose your identity however that fits good for you. Some cultures do have gender categories additional from male and female, and that is important to keep into account. And then moving on into gender expression, this is gender identity is how you see yourself, gender expression is how you express this. So gender expression, this correlates to being on the spectrum between femininity and masculinity, where in the middle you have androgyny. Sometimes people choose to not have a gender expression or perform their identity in ways that can be easily seen. Mannerisms, personal traits, preferred style, clothing, all of this serves someone to be able to express their gender identity more freely. Gender expressions can be present in people of any sex or gender identity. Gender is culture as specific to a trait of behavior that reads as male or masculine in one other culture may also be seen as female or feminine. And then lastly, for gender expression, an individual's gender expression may vary from day to day. Today, you might feel more feminine, and then tomorrow you might not feel as feminine. And that is really up to you, and you have the freedom to decide that.
So I'm going to explain the trans umbrella. So transgender people can identify as both binary and non-binary. So when they identify as non-binary, they become a trans man or they become a trans woman. And then as a non-binary, some trans people do also identify as non-binary. So they would be trans non-binary or just non-binary. So that includes the whole non-binary spectrum, which I have here, which includes so many different identities, basically everything that is outside the binary of being identifying as just a man or just a woman. So transgender refers to people whose gender expression is not in accordance with society's expectations for their biological sex assigned at birth. Trans folk cannot identify within the binary gender identities if they choose. Non-binary folks are under the transgender umbrella. Trans and non-binary is not mutually exclusive. Some people will identify as one or the other or both. Trans and non-binary people are targeted, scrutinized, and disrespected because of their identities. One major point of invalidation is not respecting pronouns or gendered words that relate to their identities. So now I want to break down the whole sex assigned at birth thing. So based on physical characteristics, that is what the sex assigned birth is. This includes internal and external reproductive systems, chromosomes, and abnormal hormonal fluctuations connected to sex assigned at birth. I do want to say that for a long time, people have been saying biological sex, which that is no longer accepted. So please try to refrain from using that. Just say sex assigned at birth. Then we have some statistics here about people who are basically born with non-standard male and female sexual organs or chromosomal differentiations. And some transgender and gender non-conforming people prefer the term sex assigned at birth because it recognizes the sex is assigned by others. Although some do not like this term and do not prefer to speak about their sex unless they feel comfortable. So don't ever push anyone to say like what their sex assigned at birth is. Only in medical settings though can this ever be necessary because it helps for people to know what is going on with your internal organs, especially if they're your sex organs or your hormones and your chromosomes, etc.
And then for sexual and romantic orientation. So this refers to the emotional, romantic, and or sexual desires that one person might feel or have for another person. Some sexual orientations related to physical sexuality include you can be heterosexual, heteroflexible, gay, lesbian, bisexual, pansexual, asexual, queer, and many more. Some romantic orientations include heteromantic, homoromantic, biromantic, panromantic, aromantic, and queer. You can also be aesthetically or emotionally attached to people who have specific gender expressions or romantic orientations. Woman attracted, femininity attracted, man attracted, maybe you're attracted to very masculine people or people that present in androgynous ways. And then moving on to what is heterosexism and heterosexist. Heterosexism is basically a system of oppression which privileges heterosexuals and discriminates queer people. This discrimination is because in a heterosexual world which we live in, heterosexism becomes heterosexual becomes the norm, and that leads to homosexuality to be seen as just not normal, not the way that things should be. So that's where discrimination is really rooted in. If you do not understand the LGBTQI+ community, the best way to learn more is to do research. Join an allyship seminar, which, fun fact, we do have it at UIC for free through the Gender and Sexuality Center. You can also make an effort to get to know your friends, colleagues, professors, and fellow students who identify within the community. However, avoid making assumptions and forcing them to explain, because it is never the responsibility of a marginalized person to have to explain everything and to be the person who teaches why they should be respected, what is their identity, and why they should not be discriminated. Put in the work yourself to learn and to be a good ally.
So now I want to talk about pronouns and neopronouns. Here's just a few pronouns. I have a little slide here that has some as well. With some examples. So neopronouns are not a new thing. They actually have been around since the 12th century. We actually haven't been using she as a pronoun since the 12th century in English. And besides everything that you see nowadays with all these neopronouns, like there's actually so many more that have kind of been tabled and put to the side by society in the past because they found it was too inconvenient. for everybody to have all these random pronouns. Like, you know, I saw that one of them was thee, thy, and thou. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool to be referred to in that way. But I can see how some people might see that as being maybe self-righteous or something. But yeah, so we have some examples here of how to use regular pronouns, gender neutral pronouns, and also a neopronoun, which is Z. So, okay, yeah, that looks good. So, and if at any point, if any of you still kind of don't understand this, feel free to approach me and ask about it. I'd be happy to clarify anything with the pronouns related stuff. Oh, I did it again. All right, and then we have some ally suggestions. So try to use inclusive language when you're talking to people, especially if you don't know how they identify, or if you know that they're queer and you're not sure exactly what words to use yet. So for instance, if you have a romantic relationship, you can use partner or significant other. Or when you're referring to somebody that you're connected to, you can say friend, pal, peeps, folks, or especially in here, chairperson for non-binary people who prefer that. If you slip up on somebody's pronouns, just don't make it a big deal. Just correct yourself and apologize. It's going to be okay. If someone else corrects you, listen. Try not to be combative, even if it's difficult to understand. Yeah, and then as we mentioned before, you can attend a Navigating Ally seminar through the GSC, which is free. And they have a few that they do throughout each semester. Or you can take a Women in Gender Studies course here at UIC, which I know for some of us, you have to do it as a prerequisite course. Making mistakes is a part of learning how to be an ally. Acknowledge, apologize, and learn from them. I know sometimes you might meet people that will get frustrated at you, but just know that they're coming from a place where they may have been hurt, or they may have been constantly misgendered or constantly disrespected. And, you know, just give it time, because not everybody is going to act that way. And also offering the buddy system, which I think can go outside of just the queer community or giving to a queer person. This can apply to almost anyone. But if a queer person feels they are in an uncomfortable situation, basically what you can do is be a person they can look to for help to defend them or to escort them to safety.
And then what allies don't do or should not do is first out queer people if someone is comfortable enough to tell you their gender identity, sexuality, or anything like that. That doesn't mean that they're comfortable with you sharing them with other people. So that's very important. Do not compare their story to others. Each person lives their identity very differently. Do not make their identities and orientation about you. Don't also assume if people are gay, straight, or in general, their identity or sexual orientation. Also, do not let queer, trans, homophobic, or comments slide. You do not have to fight them, but like physically, you can, but you shouldn't. But the point though, don't let those comments slide, because that's how heterosexuality really becomes the norm. So definitely try to stand up for other folks. Do not make assumptions about their orientation either. Do not ask personal physical questions, especially the question of like, what's on your pants? That is very inappropriate. Do not get upset from being confronted about misgendering. Do not confront people if they are correcting your on a person's different pronouns, because they're coming from a place of respecting others' identity. And allies don't think everyone is okay with being called guy, dude, girl, queen, king, and just insert more gender terms here. If we are able to just talk to each other without assuming gender, that would be amazing, especially in our setting in which we have 54 representatives, if I'm not wrong. But that is a lot of individuals and you don't know everyone's story. So if you're able to refer as individuals without gender terms, that is amazing.
And I wanted to wrap this all up with talking about the Gender and Sexuality Center. So it's located in the DSB rooms 181 through 183, which is on the first primary floor. And I put their website there. And these are the current hours. And I was also the DSC liaison for the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. So I made a small document in terms of the whole point of my liaisoning with them. So, so everyone from USG will have access to this, like currently and in the future. But I really wanted to highlight the student needs. Yeah. So another big thing to which we highlighted in our presentation is that the pronouns. So this is also something that's not being completely upheld by faculty, which it's like kind of really important for faculty to lead by example with the pronouns, because sometimes students don't get it yet. Even though, they're like, you're young, you all should get it. Like some people just don't come from areas where non-binary people exist, or people who use different pronouns, or have different identities. So it's important that faculty are kind of leading this a bit, and also helping students, like if they're constantly being misgendered in class, to step in and trying not to dead name people, which I know UIC is getting better at. So and the same thing, I guess, working with the UI Health. I know that we have it on our website that we help people get gender affirming care with using our campus care. And a lot of trans people have felt that they have not been honored with their chosen names or pronouns when they're going through that process. So again, it just none of this feels holistic to non-binary and trans people. And a lot of these other issues have been brought up in the past already, but I just wanted to highlight LGBTQIA+ leadership, visibility, and mentorship. That includes faculty, staff, students, and people off campus who are leaders that have diverse identities that are coming in and giving their stories and stuff. So yeah, I feel like those are some big important things that I would hope to see that USG looks into next semester. So yeah. Yeah. Okay, but yeah, that's it. So thank you for listening. All right, thank you so much, Lulu and Daniela. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Felix?
I just wanted to say thank you to the two of you for doing that presentation. I think it's very important to revisit it, even if you know. One thing that I want to emphasize is gendered speech. There are a lot of people in USG who say, hey guys, that's gendered speech. There are people in USG who don't identify as male or as a guy. So just trying to get that out of your vocabulary and be like, hey everyone, hey team, like whatever it may be, just so it can be gender neutral for all those who don't identify in that binary.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, thank you again to Lulu and Daniela for coming to speak to us. Our next order of business is old business. First, we have resolution 2022 S12-1002. Arthur, would you like to present this?
A motion to make an amendment to this resolution.
There's been a motion to, you can say the amendment.
A motion to make an amendment to the resolution.
No, like, what is the amendment?
So for co-sponsors of this resolution, I like to list out these names, and they are Representative Liu, Representative Me, Representative Saba, Representative Tayo, and Director Michael as co-sponsors of this resolution.
There's been a motion to amend the resolution to include the listed co-sponsors. Is there a second? All those in favor of adopting this amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Does anyone abstain? If not, then the motion is passed. Are there any other amendments?
No more amendments. In terms of now document, I realize we have a long agenda. We have a ton of other resolutions also read through, which is why I'm going to summarize a lot of the important points related to this resolution. So the actual resolution itself, I read this one last week, and essentially to summarize, it's listing out how mental health is an important topic on campus for USG to advocate for, what the mental health coalition is, what it has been working on thus far, and most importantly, the fact that I'm calling for it to be incorporated as a subcommittee officially within the undergraduate student government. And below are the governing documents, which detail what the coalition is, its mission, procedures, membership restrictions, and much more. Now, everybody, I am assuming, read the document word by word, hopefully. However, considering time constraint that we have, I will not read this document word by word. Hoping, assuming in good judgment that everybody here read it, which is why I'll just give a brief summary of the articles one by one, in case there are some who didn't read it. And some of it I will read verbatim, just because it is important. So Article 1 obviously lists the name. Article 2, this I'll read verbatim. The mission of the coalition, which is the mission of the Mental Health Coalition is to empower currently existing USG committees in the advocacy of mental health needs and changes on the UIC campus by acting as an outreach, research, and advisory council in service to USG. The primary methods of accomplishing this mission will be through the collection of data, engaging directly with the student body, working with relevant university stakeholders, bringing awareness to mental health concerns, and managing an advisory coalition between USG and mental health related student organizations and other groups that are relevant towards mental health at UIC. C, all input, research, data, and concerns from MHC shall be provided directly to USG for the coordination of legislative purposes and other initiatives. D, to empower mental health related student organizations by creating clearly defined funding opportunities for them to host and establish events, programs, and operations that further the mission of MHC. So Article 3 essentially establishes again that this subcommittee is in service to USG and its committees, that USG rules, so constitution and bylaws, will also apply to those part of the coalition, and also list the name of the 3 modes of operation that it will go under. Article 4, which goes into detail of those 3 modes of operations, and I'll read this small bit in verbatim. First off, there's the actual committee meetings, which will function as the main working body for USG members. Function very similarly to other cabinet level committee meetings, with input from the executive board and other relevant committee chairs. 2, advisory council meetings, which will function as the main group for engaging the student leaders who specialize in mental health. This will mainly consist of those who are in leadership positions in mental health related clubs, organizations, and programs at UIC. The goal is to receive feedback on USG's work, updates on the work of member organizations, and to fund activities by these groups to further USG's mental health agenda. And 3, the task force meetings, which will function as a group for engaging with university administrators, relevant external stakeholders, and selected student leaders. The goal is to coordinate cross-departmental change and policy implementation to improve the mental health situation on campus. Policy memo. And most importantly here, I'll read the verbatim since it's very important. The director will be required to consult with the USG Treasury Committee of the
Arthur, just try to skim through the rest.
Oh, am I going? Okay.
I'm sorry, it's just.
But here is the directorate before the start of every new academic year will be required to set a budget for the mental health coalition, which will be then be used to provide grants to mental health orgs that are part of the coalition. Further on goes Article 5 talks about general meeting outlines and rules. Article 6 talks about membership makeup, qualifications, and other stakeholder and what a stakeholder is. Article 7 talks about the responsibilities of the director. Fact that we can make multiple deputy positions, removal procedures for MHC representatives and the director itself. The final report the coalition will have to do at the end of every academic year. Article 9 talks about nomination procedures by the USG vice president and how that confirmation works. This will be done by majority vote of the House. Article 10 talks about how all positions will end by the end of the year. Article 11 talks about how if there's a vacant position, that it will be filled immediately if seen. And Article 12 states that any changes to this document must go through the USG Assembly. And that's my summary.
Thank you. Sorry to cut you off, but all right. So we will be voting on this resolution tonight. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Sammy?
So this budget outlined in, what is this? Article 4. Is this like an allocation of money that can be, what does this budget look like? Is it a lump sum that's given to the coalition to then spend, or is it like an allocation of money that is free for, just outlined in our like outline of other budgets to be put through general body meetings?
I'll answer this one, and Treasurer Mohammed also fill any blanks that I missed. But if I'm understanding the question correctly, this is going to be a second budget, so an allocation of funds before the academic year, because obviously the budget needs to be voted on before the start of the academic year during the very first DBM. So it'll be part of that. So it'll be a dedication of a lump sum of money to the coalition, which will be negotiated between the director and the treasurer. And that how much that is going to be is up to their discretion. Of course, the treasurer's discretion especially. And that money will then be split between the committee fund and the advisory fund. Does that answer the question?
I guess to make it more specific, because I did word it sort of confusingly, how can this budget be spent? Is it spent by the coalition in its own meetings, or does it have to be spent via resolution in a general body meeting?
My vision is that this money would be spent within the meetings themselves instead of going through a resolution.
Okay. Can I make comments on the resolution?
Johnny, you can go first.
So I'm not sure if this is exactly what you're asking, but just to kind of clarify, like the idea was that, so the money is kind of dedicated to the coalition, and they don't need to pass an additional resolution to spend it, similarly to how, like, for example, we did the tailgate. We delegated a couple of $100 to it, and then we didn't know what kind of trophy or whatever we were going to get, and then just like in the last couple of weeks, we bought the trophy. So it'd be kind of like that, like at the beginning of the year, let's say it's $2,000 is dedicated to coalition. So then the coalition will have that $2,000 to spend. Once getting approval from the treasurer, we'll have that money to spend on one of two things. So internal work. So let's say that the coalition decides to host an event or something like that, or they need some supplies, or they need this, that, or the other thing. They can spend it on that. And similarly to as you passed earlier, like an office budget or something like that. And then they would also have money that they would then give out as grants to members of the advisory council, so that the burden is not on the coalition, to be creative and think of all these different events when there are, 3, 4, 5 clubs on campus whose whole job it is to, advocate for mental health. And oftentimes clubs spend a quarter of their time fundraising. And so that's what another portion of the budget would be spent on.
Sam, you want to make your comment, and then Arthur actually.
Yeah, I understand the want for money to be like more easily spent, and I understand what you're saying about the freedom within a resolution when money is dedicated to, that not everything is explicitly outlined in every resolution that we pass. But at the same time, committees aren't given the freedom to have a budget where they can spend money without authorizing it in a general body meeting in student government. And frankly, I think it would be a little weird for us to bring this coalition in and immediately assign it part of our budget that just doesn't have to be looked over by the rest of the body. I guess that's that.
Arthur, go ahead.
I completely understand your concerns, which is why this is unlike a committee, this is a subcommittee, so it's gonna have a different nature to it. And I can understand the concerns for, like, for instance, that the coalition will one day decide to spend its money on something totally unrelated to mental health. I totally understand that concern, which is why the treasurer wouldn't just decide to not look at what the coalition is spending its money on. The coalition will still be required to have an Excel sheet of transactions being made that the coalition is spending its money on. And plus, the budget has to align with the mission of the coalition itself. And if, let's say, something goes wrong, well, that's why there's a removal procedure for MHC representative or director that decides to go off the grid. Or let's say something bad happens, the House will also always vote to remove the budget in case of anything that goes wrong. I understand the concern. However, I also think to accomplish the mission of the coalition, it would be a very wise decision to allocate the funds so that we can serve mental health stakeholders a lot more effectively, and to actually build a coalition across campus and promote mental health events as well across campus.
And just to jump in, it's not going to be a blank check per se. The way we envision it, I believe we will have the treasurer, or either the treasurer or someone from the treasury committee attend meetings. And for any clubs who are going to come to us with money for any of their events, well, first of all, the treasury committee would be kept in the loop for that. And I believe we also discussed presenting or having the club present as an item for discussion so that the body is aware of what we're doing with the money. It would just kind of take the resolution part out of it. So like, I think last semester we passed a social fund where we allocated a certain amount of money, like 1,600 or something, to be spent on the social for both semesters. So it would be something similar to that, just allocated at the beginning of the year with all the other budget stuff. Arthur? Oh, there's a lot. John, Mohammed, Arthur.
So I know that Arthur didn't directly touch on what you said about committees, and that's something that is just kind of a consequence of how we've just chosen to run our budget this year and run USG. But that is something that has happened in the past. Like if you look at the budget, there's a house fund, there's directors fund, and there's a sustainability fund. If it was so chosen to, those funds could function that way. It just hasn't. And so does that kind of get at what you were specifically, because I know that you kind of specifically mentioned that committees don't get this power, and that's just, it's not that it's impossible, it's just not something that has really been done.
So are you saying that these funds can just be spent, like, I understand the specific funds you're referring to, the ones that we see in budget breakdowns, you mean? So can that money just be spent without a legislative session?
If when the budget is passed, that is how it is outlined to be allocated and spent, then theoretically, yes.
And also to jump in here, it's not like any purchase is being made by the mental health coalition themselves. All the process, the entire thing will still go through the treasury committee. The treasury will have to pass RFIs every time a purchase is made. So it's not necessarily like a blind fund that's being given away. Everything is being kept in check. It's no different than whenever we pass collaborations. Whenever we have student orgs come and collaborate with us, we are allocated a lump sum to them, and that is to be spent designated with whatever their event is, whatever their initiative is, and that will be outlined with the mental health coalition. You will know where the funds are going, and that our goal is to remain transparent and have this as open as possible for you guys, for everyone else to be aware of what's going on.
Arthur?
And there will also be a guide sheet made outlining even just some of the essentially rules for like what can be funded and what cannot be funded. That will also involve the opinions and views of the treasurer himself, the next treasurer-elect. So we want to make sure that there are checks and balances. We're not just trying to give money out randomly. It's all to serve and fulfill the mission of the coalition, which is to more effectively build a coalition across campus. So I've been to a couple or multiple, I mean, really, student-led mental health organizations held by Active Minds, for instance, and I've seen opportunities where we could have provided grants to them that they could have used to really advertise their events a lot more effectively, or maybe to have these activities in their events as well. So I think this would be a really good opportunity for us to try this out.
All right. Before we turn to this discussion, did anyone have any other questions or comments? Okay. Did you want to respond?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would like to make it clear that I am a part of the Mental Health Coalition and that I do not have any suspicion that people in the Mental Health Coalition are trying to steal or spend. I don't imagine that would happen. I just find it, I don't know, I guess I'm a little alarmed looking at the specifics of these bylaws. If this is like a part of the undergraduate student government, that we are allocating like a specific budget that can just be spent outside of legislative sessions. That sounds like something that should be an amendment to our bylaws if we're going to be just giving money that can then be given to other organizations to a new subcommittee. If as this is being described, I feel uneasy about just assigning money that can be spent without the vote of the legislative body. I don't really see why we would need that. I mean, funding goes through here pretty easily, and it only takes 2 weeks without an executive order to give funding to an organization. I don't understand the real need for a specific, like, freely spent fund to be given to Mental Health Coalition. I understand allocating like a portion of our budget that we can expect to spend on the Mental Health Coalition's work. I feel uneasy about making our very large budget any easier to spend. I think that legislative sessions are the right way to spend our funds.
Would anyone like to respond? John?
I would say, like, I definitely understand your concerns, and that, as I said, like before, this is definitely like not exactly new. It's just not how we've done it before. But I understand that, like, what you're saying is that it's more, if I'm not mistaken, that it's a better way of functioning to just have everything go through the body. But I guess the idea and vision is that at the beginning of the year, like, really, I guess you could kind of flip this to be about how much oversight is given to the budget when it's first passed in the first place. Because ideally, most of those concerns and everything would be worked out when the budget is hammered out in the first few weeks of the semester. And so, like, just like how Michelle mentioned, the the fund for socials. Everybody that was presented to the body, and then the body said, okay, we're fine giving what, $2,000 or something for socials. At the very beginning, when the budget is hammered out and approved by the House, then they would be saying, we're okay with giving this $2,000 or so to the coalition. And so I think that really the issue might be with encouraging representatives in the House in general, and even the E-board to also make sure that the House is involved in that decision-making process more when the budget is given to them to approve for the year. Because the idea behind doing this is to give more, to free up more time and to kind of give more autonomy to something like Mental Health Coalition and to empower those student organizations, similarly to how the government, for example, the EPA does it personally, do every cleanup that happens of like an oil spill or something like that. They have grants that municipal governments and nonprofits can apply to receive some of, so that they do the work that the EPA would like to see ideally. And so I guess that's kind of what we're going for, is, so that USG members of the House, E-board members are not, like, the weight doesn't solely fall on them to make mental health improvements on campus happen, and that the USG can kind of empower the greater community to do that. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah,
I'm gonna say something first, sorry.
Okay.
So if I may speak, I don't believe the passing of this resolution is a surefire, we're going to allocate X amount of money, because that's gonna be approved by the reps when we pass the actual budget next semester, right? So if next semester people believe that this is an unwise way to spend funds, that would fully be within the jurisdiction of reps to say no to the budget, and say no, we're not giving. I may see a lot of money, and we also have a plan in place for the future treasurer and director of the coalition to evaluate the effectiveness of the fund at the end of the year, to see if this is really something worth pursuing. So it's not going to be an end all be all. This is how it's going to be for the rest of USG history. Sorry, did someone else have a question, comment? Mohammed?
Yeah, I also like to point out the whole 2-week process as well. Now, generally speaking, 2 weeks doesn't seem like a long time, but in terms of how fast collaborations move and how quickly student orgs do require funds, it does get extremely difficult to make collaborations happen. I can tell all of you guys that this past year, we've had to reject more than 6 collaborations because of the 2-week requirement. Even a week sometimes didn't cover it. And that's not something that, my conversations with Michelle and Arthur, that we thought would be very wise if the mental health coalition were to be gridlocked by that as well. Again, it's not a committee in the traditional sense, it's a subcommittee. And this is, again, as even John mentioned, reflective of how real government works as well in terms of giving grants and allocating sums of money. So this is not necessarily unprecedented. It would, in otherwise, increase the efficiency of how this mental health coalition will function.
All right, I do have to wrap up discussion, but does anyone have any closing comments? Questions? Carson?
I guess a quick suggestion.
Could you, Mike?
So I guess I could make a suggestion to kind of bring both sides into one. Basically, usually it's a 2-week process. I think what if instead of having a discussion, we just vote on that same day? So you do like a week instead of 2 weeks. That way you can get the funding right away. You don't have to wait a while for it, and everyone can still vote.
Sorry, I'm not sure if that would be something we could put into like the bylaws for that, because I think that power falls to the president to issue an executive order. So I don't think we could institutionalize that, but thank you for your comment. This is the real last one. Any last comments, questions? Tanya?
So,
Mike, sorry.
I know you mentioned earlier, like 2 seconds ago, that we can vote on this technically in the budget breakdown. So if we vote on, well, I'm not voting, but for those who are voting on this today, wouldn't that pass into the budget breakdown for the next USG year? So like, essentially, we don't get to vote on it for next year, because that's it, it's in the budget breakdown.
Does Mohammed or Matthew?
Yeah, so in the next year when I create the budget with the treasurer, it'll still be in the budget allocation, so representatives can still, let's just say if we think, if the House thinks it's too much money being allocated, they can still make the amendments and such. This is just saying that there has to be a specific allocation to the coalition in our USG budget. And worst comes to worst, whoever is present in the future years, if they see that the mental health coalition is using funds unlawfully or not for mental health reasons or for following the bylaws, they could choose not to sign the RFF. I think that's just like a last minute trump card, but that's also an option.
Okay, Sanya?
Yeah, I have a question like, what is the need to have a pre-approved budget for the MHC Mental Health Coalition? I just want a clear answer whether we as a rep would be able to vote on that or not. Like, I don't think I got a clear answer.
Sorry, could you repeat the last part?
Whether we as a representative would be able to vote on that, like, or not.
Okay. Does Mohammed or Quinn want to answer specifically for this?
Well, if I'm hearing it correctly, I think that question was already answered. If the question is, do the representatives vote on the budget? Well, yes, they do at the very start, the very first GBM starting next semester in the budget allocation sheet.
Okay, I have to wrap up discussion for this. I'm sorry, but we have to move on to voting. So all those in favor of adopting resolution 2022 S 1002, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Does anyone abstain?
I abstain.
Okay, I'm gonna call for a division of the House because I'm not clear on who exactly voted what. If you vote aye, please raise your hand in the room or in Zoom. 1, 2, 3. Please keep your hands raised high. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 12. Okay, does anyone oppose? Please say nay or, sorry, raise your hands. If you voted aye, please put your hands down. If anyone votes no, please raise your hand in the room too. 1 and 2. All right, and those who abstain, please raise your hands. 1, 2. Sorry, hi, please. All right, so 1 second, sorry guys. I believe there wasn't a majority vote for aye, but it was abstained. So could everyone who abstained Sorry, I'm gonna check the actual. Exciting, guys, last meeting. Okay. Since, okay. Sorry, just checking the rules. Since there were more ayes than nays, technically the resolution does pass. So yes, resolution 2022 S12-1002 has passed. Does anyone have any questions? If not, we will move on to the next resolution, which is, oh, Jair, could you turn on your mic? Oh, you can come.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would just like to piggyback off of what Sam was sharing his concerns about. I think this is a great resolution to have. I think there could be a lot of benefits, but I think it can be aimed in the wrong direction as well. Like Matthew, like you mentioned, if it is seen that money is being used incorrectly, there could be something done about it. So I think this should be at least amended to actually, have that power in the resolution. Because I think what we just voted on can be a little sketchy. I think Sam said it best, but I think it is something that we should just keep a close eye on. Because like I said, it is something that can have a lot of benefits, but there are a lot of loose ends that can be taken advantage of. So I think it's just something we should keep an eye on.
Okay, Matthew.
Yeah, so, again, this, the budget that this subcommittee is receiving will still be monitored by the Treasury Committee, which again is composed of representatives specialized to look over the funds along with the treasurer. And ultimately, as well, as I mentioned, the president can sign onto the RFF. If never seen an RFF, the president has to sign on to be for that RFF to be approved and passed to the DOS. And so there will always be a check to the mental health coalition. In addition, the vice president will either serve as director or appoint as director. And again, also, yes, representatives will be in the coalition. So if worst comes to worst, funds are being used unlawfully, they could bring it up to the House and all the such and deny the approval of this budget.
Tanya?
So I guess the main concern isn't that like there will be no one overseeing this, because obviously it's been mentioned several times, the Treasury Committee will be in those meetings. The concern is that the Treasury Committee should not be the sole vote of what is happening in the Mental Health Coalition. The Treasury Committee sees if what they're doing is legal or not, and the House votes on it, whether we collectively agree on it. Like the representatives here are the vote, we are not. Nobody on the e-board is, and the treasurer himself or themselves, whoever it would be, is also not the vote either. So the concern is, I mean, if everyone agrees with me, is that us voting that it's already been passed, but us voting on this now indicates that it will be in the budget breakdown, no matter what number is put to it, it will be a part of this for USG. So as long as the president or the executive team will allow it to stay in here. So even though the Treasury Committee is going to be overseeing this, taking away that dialogue and that conversation, which is the point of USG meetings, is it's a little bit negating it, because then back to Sam's point, no other committee gets an allocation, even if it is like it didn't work in previous sessions. Where like with the social, but the social is different because that's it's a little bit more outlined because it's materials for the social, and mental health coalition is such a broad thing. And so is every other committee that, you know, what they work on is a little bit more like arbitrary, whereas social is you can have materials and food and whatever, because it's a very, very narrow, specific thing. But in mental health coalition, it's a much more broad thing. So to take that away from USG sessions and open conversation kind of goes against what the legislative body is here for.
And I also want to make a note for representatives, abstentions don't technically count as votes. So it just means you didn't vote yes or no. If there's more abstains than yeses, it doesn't mean it doesn't pass. As long as there's a majority of yeses, something passes. So if you disagree with a resolution, don't be afraid to say no. Yeah, abstains do not equal no's. That's just my note. Any last comments? Okay. Arson, John, and then Arthur.
So I first want to say that I agree with Jair, Danya, and Sam. I think that even me being a treasury committee, student org seeking funding, it still goes through the GDM, still gets voted on, and still gets, you know, comments and everything. But just having one vote and giving a section of the budget, which the coalition can just use on anything, well, not anything, but on the coalition. I think that with everything just being voted on, I think we should just keep that and not change the structure of how things are. We should, if needed be, maybe like seek a way to get the funding quicker through means of maybe through a survey over email, or maybe just every week basis, but not just a one vote and that's it.
Thank you. John and Arthur, and then we're moving on.
Well, I just wanted to add one point of clarification, which is I heard a lot of people say unlawful, and DOS does sign every RFF, so there's like zero possibility of that happening. It would basically just be the issue that I think was mainly what Sam and Tanya and Terry brought up, which is, you know, whether or not the House approves of it. But I kind of just wanted to clarify that.
Arthur?
Yeah, I was going to also say something very similar to that, plus the fact that the treasurer can decide whether he, she, or they will want to sign the RFF to begin with. And plus, just in terms of the sphere of liability, well, what's preventing us from being liable when we vote on a resolution to collaborate with an org? There's still that risk. And in the coalition, there will still be representatives part of the whole process. I did note that the director will be required to report on the dealings of the coalition, what's going on. It's not like the stakeholders will be part of the coalition, will be in the committee meetings always, or for that matter, not really. That's why I distinguished the advisory meeting and the committee meeting. So it's not like the stakeholders has any sort of ability to really even hijack the coalition to begin with, since this is still under USG's jurisdiction.
Okay. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for discussion. We will now be moving on to resolution 2022 as 12-1003. Please read this as fast as you humanly can.
Okay, I'm not going to read it, but I do motion to make an amendment.
Okay.
To add two, let it be further results, which will begin immediately right after the first, let it be resolved. And I'll email the highlights, and I'll read it very quickly, these two amendments. But I meant to add, let it be further resolved that the undergraduate student government will work with the University of Illinois at Chicago with administrators, including but not limited to the provost, to seek the assistance and resources of the Innovation Center and the university to more effectively develop the website, conduct research of improving transparency and accessibility of mental health resources, and let it be further resolved, the University of Illinois Chicago will provide available traffic data and other data of how often similar web pages and websites of resource pages like the Student Success Initiative, campus resources from the Counseling Center, student resources from the Student Affairs, and other similar web pages are used and accessed. The University of Illinois Chicago will work with USG to determine how often these kinds of web pages are used, and then create one website that consolidates all mental health campus and off-campus resources to avoid repetition across all UIC web pages.
There has been a motion to amend resolution 2022 S12-1003 to include the stated let it be resolved. Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye. All that opposed, please say nay. Does anyone abstain? If not, then the motion is passed. All right. So would you like to
Quick
summarize?
summary, it's just overall USG's endorsement and agreement to work on developing the mental health network website, which was developed by the leadership UIC team that I was part of into the next academic year, essentially. That details the reasons for why, what the website is about. There's an attached letter to it that will be sent to the names on it, and that's my summary.
All right, we will be voting on this tonight. Are there any questions or comments? If not, we will move on to voting. All those in favor of adopting resolution 2022 S12-1003, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Does anyone abstain? If not, then the resolution is passed. We will now be moving on to resolution 2022 S12-101. Jair, Alessandro, or Alexandra, would you like to present this?
Yeah, I can just go over it since we are on time. This is
You can
just,
answer this one verbatim if you want.
oh, okay. Okay, whereas a representative, okay, wait, hold on, my bad. Resolution 2022 S12-101, promoting safety within USG space. Chief sponsors were read, co-sponsors Felix, Campus Life Committee Chair. Whereas a representative was injured in one of USG spaces during an event, whereas it is the responsibility of the undergraduate student government to promote safety, not only for the UIC community, but for members as well. Whereas it is the responsibility of USG to provide aid to students in distress, whereas first aid kits should be a standard safety precaution for all organizations within UIC, pardon. Let it be resolved, the undergraduate student government will spend no more than $100 to purchase safety materials that are located in an accessible location available for all students. Let it be further resolved, the Treasury Committee will incorporate funds into the annual budget dedicated for the safety of students. Let it be further resolved, all USG members will be responsible for notifying the Treasury Committee when supplies are low. And if you just kind of keep scrolling, there is a link of a Target first aid kit. I also copied and pasted in the chat. And there's some good reviews on it. It's a hard case kit. And it has about, I forget the exact number, but it has a plethora of items. So yeah, I yield my time for questions.
Are there any questions or comments? We will be voting on this tonight. If not, we will move on to voting. All those in favor of adopting resolution 2022 S12-101, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Does anyone abstain? If not, then the resolution is passed. We will now move on to resolution 2022 S12502. Michael or John, would you like to present this?
Yeah, so this is the resolution presented last week on the general use bulletin board. It was basically so people don't always have to identify themselves, so they could, get like-minded students when they don't feel comfortable putting their direct name on it. It would be managed by SCEs where we implement putting the bulletin board, and flyers would be removed often and need to be put up frequently, so there's no clutter, or if there's anything abrasive, building management would be looking at it. So yeah.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? We will be voting on this tonight. If not, we will now move on to voting. All those in favor of adopting resolution 2022 S12502, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Does anyone abstain? If not, then the resolution is passed. We will now move on to resolution 2022 S12503. Michael or John, would you like to present this?
So again, this has two changes within the residential handbook for students in housing. So the first one basically wants to remove this phrase before the two, which basically talks about there's no offense for sexually suggestive language, pictures, or graphics. So we do think that people should be able to have, flyers in housing that invite people to talk about, like their sexuality. So we don't want it to be removed just because it's sexually suggestive. And then the second part is they're kind of vaguely describing, lewd or indecent, which could be used to dress code students and also, stop people from expressing themselves fully. We don't think that housing should be able to, dress code students or define people as being lewd. We think that they should be held into the accordance of, Chicago law. And, yeah.
Okay, we will be voting on this tonight. So are there any questions or comments? If not, we will now move on to voting. All those in favor of adopting resolution 2022 S12503, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Does anyone abstain? If not, then the resolution is passed. We will now move on to resolution 2022 S12100. Diego, would you like to present this?
Absolutely. Resolution 2022 S12100, appreciation and recognition of UIC maintenance employees. Chief sponsor is myself, co-sponsor is Public Affairs Director Abigail Petanillo. Whereas the undergraduate student government, USG, wishes to acknowledge and honor the hard work of UIC maintenance workers, and whereas these workers commonly go unnoticed despite their immense contributions to the efficient running of UIC and its facilities, then let it be resolved that USG would create homemade cards thanking the UIC maintenance workers for their hard work and dedication to the smooth running of UIC, and let it further be resolved that USG will host an appreciation event for the maintenance staff during the 2022 to 2023 school year, in which staff will be honored with a meal during the start or end of their shift.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions regarding this resolution? We will be voting on it. Mohammed?
Yeah, I have a question of whether or not this event will require funding. If so, how much?
I can answer that.
Go ahead.
So for what we're doing right now, it requires no funding, but next year, the event we're planning does obviously, because we'll be renting a room and with you guys.
Can I respond to that?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I just do want to make a simple point clear to the general board about how the budget kind of works or whatnot. There isn't necessarily a precedent for the resolutions passed this year to roll over next year because our budget doesn't roll over. Every year is a clean slate and whatnot. So even though we could have a resolution this year pass that says we'll hold a event like this next year you will have to present another resolution if it requires funding. Just make sure I'm on the same page.
Just a follow up to that.
Could you turn on your mic? Sorry. Could you turn on your mic? Sorry. Oh, you can come up or go
The
to.
point of including that part in the resolution was as a reminder for us to fulfill that next year, because I know that Representative Diego and I had a very important meeting with the Vice Chancellor about that event. So we just wanted to make sure that as a reminder, following up of this resolution, we understand that we have to present a resolution again, but this was kind of an interim thing, just these cards in place of the event. So that's why we included that portion in the resolution to make sure that we are reminded next semester when we go over past resolutions as a reminder to post that event, because we have discussed it with administration.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, we will now move on to voting. All those in favor of adopting resolution 2022 S12100, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Does anyone abstain? If not, then the resolution is passed. Next, we have resolution 2022 S12103, which was amended to the agenda. It should be or it can be found as a reply to the packet email. Sarah Khan, would you like to present this?
Yes, ma'am. Resolution 2022 S12103, UIC part-time undergraduate student, associate dean's list. Chief sponsors myself, Student Success Committee Chair Matthew Hernandez, Vice President Arthur Kozowski. Whereas the purpose of the USG is to provide governance, advocacy, and service to a student body at the University of Illinois at Chicago. And whereas the Student Success Committee seeks to ensure that USC students achieve academic excellence and gain skills necessary for their career, advocates for higher education issues, and ensure inclusive education for all students. And whereas full-time undergraduate students are recognized after every semester on the dean's list if they achieve a 3.5 GPA or higher. And whereas there is no recognition for part-time undergraduate students, and therefore should be more representation and acknowledgement who also perform well in academics for their high academic achievement and hard work. And whereas UIC is a public institution with a high percentage of commuter students who may be part-time students and or non-degree seeking. And whereas the attached appendix list presents new sources and detailed research that further elaborates the reasons for awarding part-time students, including contents of students' testimonials from several universities that include honors recognition for both full-time and part-time undergraduate students. And whereas the current 2021-2022 academic year provost has expressed support to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of part-time students in their education, then let it be resolved that the undergraduate student government calls on the provost or other necessary UIC administrators to work alongside the undergraduate student government to create an associate's dean's list, and that it be sponsored by the provost office or any other necessary administration office to be implemented in the academic year 2022-2023 and its continuation thereafter. Then let it be further resolved that this associate's dean's list will not be on par with that of a dean's list that current full-time students receive, but still serve to recognize the academic excellence of part-time students and their contribution to the institution.
Thank you. Are there any questions? We will be voting on this tonight. Questions, comments? If not, we will be moving on to voting. All those in favor of adopting resolution 2022 S12103, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Does anyone abstain? If not, then the resolution is passed. We will now move on to the next order of business, which is new business. First, we have resolution 2022 S13700. John, Danya, Mohammed, well, anyone present this, please.
All right, so I'll be presenting resolution 2022 S13700, USG Gal funding and initiative allocation. Chief sponsors being myself, Secretary Danya, Treasurer Mohammed, President Anshu, and VP Arthur. Co-sponsors being Diversity and Inclusion Chairperson Daniela Guerrero. Whereas April 25th is the last legislative session of the undergraduate student government for the spring 2022 semester, where funding can be allocated, making any unspent funds unusable. And whereas the USG has remaining initiatives and unfinished projects that require funding, let it be resolved that the remaining $15,000 of the USG budget be allocated to funding potential gala expenses, diversity and inclusion sleeping area project, business clubs and organizational leadership, and any other potential projects or programs as stated by the executive team.
All right, are there any questions or comments? Anshu?
I move to use an executive order to vote on this tonight.
The president has issued an executive order, so we will be voting on this tonight. Are there any questions or comments? Felix?
So I want to ask, you said the remaining 1,500 of the USG budget. So there's a resolution that's going to be next asking for $100. Will there be money for that? I spoke to Treasurer Mohammed and he said there was. I just wanted to double check before we pass this resolution.
So I can actually just move to put approximately 1,500 in this so that doesn't complicate anything.
Okay, cool.
All right, so I motion to amend this resolution to add approximately before 15,000.
There's been a motion to add approximately before 15,000 for this resolution. Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Does anyone abstain? If not, then the motion is passed. Any other questions or comments? If not, we will move on to voting. All those in favor of adopting resolution 2022 S13-700, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Does anyone abstain? If not, then the resolution is passed. We will now move on to our next resolution, which is resolution 2022 S13-202. Felix, would you like to present this?
Actually, Representative Brenda is gonna represent this, or sorry, yeah.
That's fine, thanks. Brenda, go ahead.
Hello, can you
Yes.
hear me right?
Yes.
So I'll be presenting resolution 2022 S13-202. And the chief sponsors will be our Director of Campus Life, Felix, Megan, our Representative Isaiah, Samuel, Rocky, and me, as well as, I'm so sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce, the representative.
Veronica's fine.
Veronica, oh, okay. And Grant. And we have our co-sponsor, our treasurer. And from there, whereas the undergraduate student government wants to promote scholarship among the University of Illinois at Chicago student body, and whereas students are more inclined to study in a group setting, then let it be resolved that the undergraduate student government will sponsor a study event for all students of the University of Illinois at Chicago in the Inner Circle on Thursday, April 28, 2022, from 4 p.m. till 7. Let it be further resolved, the undergraduate student government will allocate no more than $100 for the rental fee of the video and audio and anything else needed for the event. And let it be further resolved, any leftover funds will be reallocated to the undergraduate student government budget.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Anshu?
I move to use an executive order to vote on this tonight.
The president has issued an executive order, so we will be voting on this resolution tonight. Any other questions or, yeah, Sam?
I'd like to amend the resolution to have the president and speaker's names at the bottom.
Oh, there's been a motion to add the president and speaker's names to the bottom of the document. Is there a second? All right, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Does anyone abstain? If not, then the motion is passed. Any other questions or comments? Felix?
I'd like to motion an amendment to add co-sponsor Secretary Dania.
There's been a motion to add Secretary Dania as a co-sponsor for this resolution. Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Does anyone abstain? If not, then the motion is passed. Any other questions or comments? If not, we will move on to voting. All those in favor of adopting resolution 2022 S13-202, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Does anyone abstain? If not, resolution 2022 S13-202 is passed. Congrats on passing the last resolution of the semester. Okay, we will now move on to our next order of business, which is items for discussion. First, I would like to allow everyone to get their food while we have our presenter presenting, but please do so respectfully without speaking, so as to give Anthony your full attention. Anthony will be presenting the Judicial Branch idea as an item for discussion.
It's over to you.
Okay. And I'll give the floor to Anthony.
Okay.
Oh, I can, sorry.
Okay, so me and Felix have been working on a judicial branch idea. So yeah, this is like a rough draft right now. So yeah. So what's the point of judicial branch? We said that it handles election appeals, handles disputes with other student orgs, and so disputes within USG, and there's like many more stuff like the student code of conduct and all that stuff. So what are the requirements for a justice to become a chief justice or associate justice or deputy chief justice? So me and Felix came to agreement that there's no double dipping, so you can't be in the legislative and in the judicial branch. You're going to be in one. You're appointed by the USG president. 2/3 of the legislative branch must approve. They have a lifetime term, which is like, let's say Sam's appointed. Sam's a sophomore, so he's here till he graduates, which is his senior year. They don't have voting privileges, but they will have like what the secretary has, voice privileges. So yeah. So let's say the chief justice graduates and there's only associate justices and deputy chief justice. Like the deputy does not automatically get it. You have to apply it through again to become like the chief justice, because that's like the chief justice, and there's no age or major requirement, because that's kind of bogus in my opinion. So these are the officers of the judicial branch. There only consists 3 or 5 justices, and I want to keep it odd, so like there's no like a tie. So yeah, so 1 being the chief justice, 1 being the deputy chief, and the remainder being associate justices. And also the judicial branch consists of the attorney general. The attorney general also have the deputy attorney general, of course. And why should we have the attorney general? If any USG member or USG overall is in a judicial proceeding, the attorney general will represent USG. USG will be in charge of the USG constitution and bylaws, which is like changing them, all that stuff. If there's an impeachment process in the constitution of USG, there's an ad hoc committee, and the attorney general will be in control of the ad hoc committee. And this is like if you want, but the attorney general will be in charge of the strike system instead of the chief of staff. And that's it for now.
All right. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this? Sonia? Mike, sorry, Mike.
This is a great presentation. My main question really is, so the double dipping, so they can't be a part of the legislative and judicial branch, so like a representative cannot?
No, you could be like, okay, let's say Sam again. He becomes a justice. Sam will not be able to vote or any of that. So he'll only be in a judicial branch, because a judicial member will technically be an ex officio member.
So let's say for instance, Sam, if he, so with the whole like EPC, like into the next term, like if, okay, I guess I'll use me as an example, like I put myself as a representative for next year, I will be in USG next year as a representative. I would not be allowed to be a judge then, or a justice, because I would have to revoke my right to vote. So I would have to become a judge. Does that make sense? Like if it's already been decided by EPC that I'm a rep, then I can't be.
No, I'm trying to, it's like, how can I say this?
So
Felix comes.
yeah, so the whole purpose of this is just to make sure it's fair and just. So let's say there is something going on when it comes to the elections process, then the justice would be, like we said, an ex officio member, but it wouldn't be fair to have people in both roles. So someone in the executive branch and in the judicial branch, that's like a conflict of interest. Same thing, legislative branch and judicial branch. So if you look at our main government, we have those 3 branches, and a president can't be in Congress, and a president can't be in the Supreme Court. And those Supreme Court justices serve life terms, just to keep it non-political, in a sense where it's like, oh, like, vote for me for my reelection. You know what I mean? It's just, it keeps it as fair as possible and as impartial.
Any other questions or comments? Arthur?
Absolutely good presentation. Obviously it's a really interesting subject matter. A lot of other student governments do have a judicial branch, and I can understand the reasoning and overall idea for why perhaps we should have a judicial branch. But I think more time into focusing on like the nature of our school and looking at a little bit more about how our elections function first. So we take into consideration, because I didn't see any like comparisons for like how other schools do it in this presentation. Of course, I'd like to hear hear what other schools have done. I think that would be very interesting and important to bring to our body's attention. But I think it's really important that we first focus on reforming the election planning committee itself first, because there's still a lot of work to be done there in terms of ensuring that there's transparency and overall student feedback on what's going on in those in the actions behind the EPC. I think that's a job that should be first focused on and done by our body first before we focus on creating an entirely new branch of government, especially when we don't know how this branch would function alongside the EPC, which still needs to be reformed.
So if I wanted to become a justice, then that would leave an empty seat. So what is like the timeline of this transition then? Because applications reopen in the fall, and let's say, for instance, I or whoever represented transitions over to becoming a justice, that leaves an empty seat. And if there's like more than one person, that leaves other empty seats. So I guess my main question would be, would those justices be decided on before application reopens?
So basically, like, the whole point of the justices is to find students who are passionate about the law and passionate about becoming a possible justice. So there are some people who are not in USG because they aren't interested in the legislative portion of it. So we would mainly be looking for other students who would be interested in the role outside of USG. And that's kind of why we were saying how there's really no like limit to age or major, because it doesn't take it doesn't take rocket science to be impartial and just, especially if someone who is passionate about this. We shouldn't limit it just to people within USG. It should be like a campus-wide type of search, or people who are interested apply for it. So it would kind of eliminate that open seat, and it would be something that would be done in the beginning of the year. So let's say someone in the legislative body who would want to be in this, they would apply for it before. I think in the beginning there would be like that kind of concern about an open seat, but over time it wouldn't be an issue because there would already be like a set kind of timeline in that aspect. So does that answer your question?
I mean, I understand that it's being open to not just USG, but that does leave the issue of an open seat, and there is a hard deadline for those applications when they do close. I guess my main question was, what is the timeline of choosing those justices? Is it before reapplication or applications reopen, or is it after, when representatives have already been voted in?
I think this whole idea of a judicial branch is very preliminary. So the timeline is very like there's nothing set in stone right now. Just the idea. Anthony and I, we have met with other universities and discussed how they run their judicial branch. So I guess that's something that we can definitely look into, because we really don't have like a set answer for that right now. I can just assume that this a process of voting for justices would happen before any type of voting for the representative seats, just to make sure there's no vacant seats.
John?
Okay, so actually, I'm sorry.
It's fine, just go ahead.
Okay, sorry, John. So my question was regarding the enforcement power of a supposed judicial branch, because right now we do have oversight from DOS who have the ability to tell us when a resolution would be unconstitutional, if you will, or not, who has the ability to stop purchases or, halt USG if, things weren't going correctly or if there was some real legislation and so forth. So with that being said, and with ABC looking over the election planning and the election appeals and so forth, I guess where does the judicial branch's enforcement power come over, and how does it not overlap with existing institutional norms that are there to enforce and make sure USG stays on track?
So like when it comes to the election planning committee, that's something that from my understanding was created through USG, and that's something that can be reversed. The whole purpose of this judicial branch is to kind of get rid of the investigation portion of the election planning committee, because there's been a lot of complaints of them not being able to fulfill their duties in that aspect. So keep the election planning committee, allow them to plan the elections, to advertise it, but when it comes to enforcing the rules of it, hand it over to someone else who will be able to give time and resources to look into it further in a way where it's just and impartial. And then when it comes to having them speak in the general body meetings, yes, we do have our advisors, but students kind of know what students go through. So it'd be important to have that nonpartisan, impartial type of voice in the room that isn't UIC admin, but understands what the students at UIC goes through.
Any other questions or comments? John?
I just wanted to say once again, to Anthony, good job on putting this all together. I know that, you worked hard on it.
Yay!
And I wanted to say that kind of to echo what's kind of been said, I think that the best first step would be to really aim towards using this as a replacement for the EPC, because really, Felix mentioned all the other things EPC does and everything, but honestly, a lot of these appeals are the bulk of what the EPC does. And so even if this body, for the first portion of its existence just was a replacement to the EPC, that would be a full-time job entirely. And I think that would be something extremely valuable and would be a great first step for a project like this, especially because also if they served for a year or two doing that, then you'd have experienced people. And as you mentioned, you said lifetime appointments, correct? Well, lifetime for the university. But anyway, and so I think that that would be a great first step for it to be worked on towards the next year, and something that is the model that is often used at other universities. We've talked with Vice Chancellor Tolliver about things like that. He served on his university's body that was like this, the judicial branch, and they mainly worked on elections. He's super passionate about it. Somebody who's actually pretty open to that idea as well. And so I recommend you reach out to Rex. He could probably talk to you for hours about that. And so, yeah, I just wanted to say that, I think that there's a lot of work to be done regarding that, but that would be a great direction. And once again, great job, Anthony.
Yeah. Any last comments, questions? Arthur?
Really quickly, just a reminder that keep in mind that the university does not treat all elections equally. They do not, at least my experience is, view or treat presidential elections the same way that they treat a student trustee election. So that needs to be taken into consideration.
All right, thank you. If that's it, then thank you for presenting it, Anthony and Felix. We will now move on to the next order of business, which is ex officio reports. May we please have the report of the advisor? All right, thank you. We will now move on to the next report, which is the report of the student trustee. Is there a report from the student trustee? If not, we will now move on to the next, oh, is there? No. We will move on to the next order of business, which is, oh, he's here. Do you have a report, Levine?
Yeah, I will actually send my report like very soon. It's under the report card, which is a special program student trustee office just doing this year. But I'm really here to say a few words of thanks to all of you, especially the people who I ran with, President Anshu, John, Arthur. The year been really started with the COVID, but we came in the end of like everybody's back. So, and really want to give like hats off to all of your like dedication, hard work, perseverance to everybody's hard work, putting aside in the UIC, serving the students and the community. So just here to say thanks on the last meeting of USG.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Levine? If not, like he said, he will be sending his report. We will now move on to the next order of business, which is officer reports. I will be allocating 1 minute each to all of you. I'm so sorry, but when the timer goes off, your officer report is over. So just give your closing remarks. First, we have the report of the president.
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone in USG for making this year amazing. It's been an absolute pleasure serving as your president this year, and I'm excited to see what you all will work on in the coming years. And so in the last 2 weeks, I was able to meet with the Chancellor and Vice Chancellor Rex Tolliver to discuss various initiatives, things like the GEO strike and what the timeline is on that, reading days and religious observation, OER and lockdown browser, and then USG Gala and Diego's Art Institute initiative, which everyone likes, but no one has funded yet. So hopefully getting that moving. Also attend the Public Safety Board meeting last week. We'll continue to advocate for institutionalized student feedback and transition Matthew into those meetings very soon. There is a White Sox game this Friday. If you did not RSVP and would still like to try and come, please fill out the form. No guarantees, but if you do fill it out, I'll try my best to get you in. Okay, I yield my time. there.
Thank you. Sorry. No questions. Sorry. We will now move on to the report of the vice president.
All right. Last quote of the semester, but hopefully not to end with me, but to begin by the next incoming VP. But my quote is, for me, success is not a public thing, it is a private thing. It is when you have fewer and fewer regrets. Overall, thank you for everybody who helped me on all the resolutions. Good job on those who worked on the resolutions that I helped advise them on. I'll be working on incoming transition documents for the incoming leadership. Overall, thank you for everybody for making USG possible this year and for your hard work and dedication. I hope USG will continue to grow and prosper into the next academic year. I fully trust the next leadership to continue the mission of empowering USG to serve students first. I encourage those, and good job.
Beautiful, Arthur, thank you. We will now move on to the report of the treasurer.
Thank you. And then for myself as well, for the final comment, my quote is, life is a circle. The end of one journey is the beginning of the next. So this past week, I attended the Mental Health Coalition meeting. I also wrapped things up with the URC Senate's task force. The majority of it will be sent to the provost's office. My main kind of focus now is beginning the transition process for our next treasurer, Quinn. I'm excited to see what they'll do. Very proud of them. Yeah, of course, applause. And then to everybody, congratulations for those who are graduating, and for those who will continue in USG. I look forward to working with all of you next year. Thank you.
Next, we have the report of the speaker. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for those who came out to the USG Social. I attended the Chancellor Search Listening Session for students, and I emphasized USG initiatives. I met with Secretary Danya, COS John, and those people, sorry, your names there, to discuss the gala itinerary this week. I'm working on uploading documents to the USG box and updating representative points. If you led an event or helped out with an event, please shoot me a message so you can get your points. For MHC, we met with Provost Fraze and discussed meeting days and effective student advocacy amongst other important topics. I met with Vice President Arthur, Treasurer Mohammed, and Treasurer-elect Flynn to discuss the introduction of the MHC budget. And I just wanted to say thank you all for such a wonderful year. I'm so proud of all the work we've done, and I'm so honored to have been your speaker. And I'm excited to see what the next administration does. Okay. Under a minute, guys. We will now move on to the next officer report, which is the Chief of Staff.
All right, so Boss Michelle.
Okay, I'll restart your timer. Go ahead.
All right, so I just wanted to start things off by saying that thank you everybody for a wonderful year. Serving this year has really been, an amazing experience, and I'm just really glad to have met all of you. Like, you guys just been great. I really, appreciate all the hard work you guys have put in, and I can't wait to, as others have said, see what you guys do in the coming years. You guys are really an inspirational group of people, and you'll also, probably hear some more stuff like that at the gala. But I really just wanted to impart on you guys just like how thankful I am to be able to, spent this year with all of you. And then for my report, I mean, you guys can read it if you want to. If you don't, that's your prerogative. But thanks for a great year, guys.
Thank you. Yay. We will now move on to the next report, which is the Secretary's report.
I have a report from last week. You can read it if you want. For my report for this week, first of all, thank you. Yes. I met with Chief of Staff Donors, Speaker of the House, and other representatives to discuss the itinerary of the gala. I met with Lajana, our advisor, Michelle Ramirez from DOS, in regards to the contracting of the UIC DJ mobile service that we'll be getting at the Palmer House. I contacted Georgia Davis. I have a contract. I forwarded it to the people. I'm working now on the itinerary, which will include like speeches, awards, recognitions, yada, yada, yada. I don't have a gala committee meeting next week. I will have 2 team meetings the week of the gala so that we will get the itinerary and everything is set to go. So the shuttle buses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yes. I hope my time for questions. No, there's no questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Danya. We'll now move on to the next report, which is the report of the Diversity and Inclusion Chair. Is there a report?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Very quickly. So this week, and the last thing we're trying to do is with the help of John, Alex, Manor, and Matthew, we're trying to get set up the sleeping area. Hopefully that's something we can happen. We've been working on that. And then apart from that, my next committee meeting, that's the last one we're going to be having a social. Probably a very simple thing, but if you're able to join, feel free to just crash. Let me know. And then lastly, thank you to all my committee members for being amazing. It was really an honor to be your committee chair. Truly, each one of you is amazing. And to all representatives, feel free to always reach out to me. And then also representatives, feel free to apply to positions of e-board or to put yourself in other leadership positions. All of you are capable. All of you are ready. And that's it. Thank you for allowing me to be your diversity and inclusion chair.
Yay, thank you. Next report is the report of the Legislative Affairs Chair.
So like the others have said, I met with Provost with the Mental Health Coalition to discuss games, resolutions, and other things. Also had an athletic council meeting on Thursday. Got to see what they're up to. Still working to schedule a meeting with Dr. McCall. We're going to meet Wednesday as of now at 1. So the resolutions for the speech codes passed, so we'll work on presenting them to higher ed and like the provost. Then there's a meeting with some of the business students on campus on Wednesday. That's it.
All right, thank you. Yay.
Also, the applications for e-board.
We will now move on to the next report, which is the report of the Public Affairs Chair.
Okay, I didn't put in my report because I did not process that this is the last meeting, but I'd like to thank everyone for working so hard this year and thank my committee members for their creativity and willingness to answer my question of the week every committee meeting. And also just you guys always supporting each other in whatever initiatives or helping Darian or me with anything. As for what we're working on, please help Diego make the cards. We have the construction paper and markers, so he will coordinate with everyone and put it in the group chat of when you can go make the cards for the appreciation for the staff, so please do that. And upcoming, I'll post this semester summary of resolutions, work on the slideshow for the gala of like pictures from the year, and updating the website with the minutes and agendas, but it's been updated with the bylaws and the constitution.
All right, thank you. Next, we have the report of the Student Success Chair. Go ahead.
So talent is God-given, be humble. Fame is man-given, conceit, or be grateful. Conceit is self-given, be careful. So thank you guys. Thank you everyone for an amazing year. You know, it's always a privilege to work on student concerns. I'm trying not to cry here, guys. So yeah, thank you. So yeah, the last committee check-in is this Friday. The Chancellor Search Committee listening sessions were last 2 weeks ago, not last week. I think that's the first I can talk about what's happening in the search committee. I still have to figure out what's confidential and what's not. But basically, my report is that I'm doing last call of meetings with everyone I've worked with in the past year. And finally, one special shout out to the Student Success Committee representatives, best representatives in the world. Thank you.
Yay. Last but certainly not least, we have the report of the Canvas Life Chair.
I sent it in the email. I don't know if you got it. All right, well, I'll start giving it. So I included last week's officer report, so feel free to read that. This week, attended the FSL Awards, went to another GEO rally, final Campus Life Committee meeting. Thank you to everyone in the Campus Life Committee for all your hard work. You're truly amazing. Campus Life Committee is the best committee. Don't forget that. And then we all planned the study session together. So thank you to Dani and Mohammed for all your help with the study session. Thank you everyone for all your hard work and good luck on finals and stay healthy. Congratulations to everyone who is graduating. That concludes my report, but I did want to say one thing. We just talked about gendered speech earlier, and I heard a lot of people saying you guys. So as leaders, I feel like we all should hold each other accountable. So just keep that in mind. We just talked about it, so there's no reason to include it. So yeah, yield my time.
All right. Okay, thank you, Felix. Sorry if I said it in my report. I'm just trying to pass. We will now move on to the next order of business, which is announcements. Are there any announcements? John?
So I do have an announcement, and that is that, please don't spam the chat. No, I do have an announcement, and that is that me and Darian grabbed some ice cream for you guys, and so you guys can all partake. You know, in high school they had ice cream socials. Well, we're gonna do one of those. So there's all the stuff you can put on it. So yeah, you can have that after food.
Sonia and then Diego.
Stay after so we can take pictures. Do not leave. Thank you.
All right, Diego.
Yes, I have an announcement. I just want to say thank you for having allowed me to join USG, for being a representative. I'm very appreciative that I was given this opportunity. I will treasure the memories and the friends that I made along the way. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Last announcement. Veronica, go ahead. And then Matthew. Do you want to turn on your mic? Sorry.
It's just been 2 months here, but like I'm really grateful because I work with you guys, and yeah, I made some banana pudding, so I don't want to hear about it. There's no flavor in there, so I hope you guys have. Yeah, I feel everybody a lot after this, so yeah. Oh, yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Specify that there's no poison. Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, very important announcement. Yeah, so again, applications for the e-board are still open, so please apply if you want to continue in the executive board for next year. All positions are open, and everyone is encouraged to apply if they would like to advance in leadership. And I highly encourage everyone, again, the deadlines are on the application. I think chief of staff is due this week on Friday, and the rest of the board applications are due next week on Friday, so please be sure to apply. Thank you.
Thank you. Yay. Any last announcements? If not, we will now move on to our next order of business, which is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Wow, everyone. Does anyone, wait, nope. There's been a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there, oh my gosh. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Does anyone abstain? If not, the meeting is now adjourned at